Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today in our threat briefing of the first quarter of 2026. We dubbed it as the same as it always been. We'll get back to that in this webinar. Let us start with introducing myself. I'm Eric van Dijk, I'm Dutch. I'm our Global Product Manager for Threat Intelligence. So I work everything intelligence related in Orange Cyber Defense. And today, the webinar, I'm doing it with a big friend of mine, Saskia.
Hi, I'm Saskia Kuska. I'm a technical team lead for the Orange Cyber Defense CSERT. So I've been working in incident response and digital forensics for more than 10 years now. Ransomware cases, data leaks, you name it, we've seen it. South African, but currently based in the Netherlands.
And before we get further, let us introduce a bit. Saskia mentioned it already, the CERT. We are part of the Computer Emergency Response Team of Orange Cyber Defense. And you can see for yourself, I won't keep this slide on too long. A lot of experts, a lot of things we are doing, and all these things could help you. But at least you know the context where we are from. And what are we going to do today for you? What we are covering, we're going to do a combined briefing about threat intelligence and incident response. We are going to show you why, hopefully, you also see they are stronger together. And I'll start with threat intelligence, and I also like a bit of methodology. So why are we doing threat intelligence? And then afterwards, I'll go into the threat landscape, a threat briefing about a global part, and I'm then focusing to the Dutch landscape. And I will hand it over to Saskia.
Yeah, and what I've brought for you guys today is a CSERT war story, where we really want to showcase some techniques that Eric discusses a bit in his threat briefing, what it actually looks like in a real life incident, in a real life case. And then hopefully discuss some ways that you and your company can protect yourselves against these sorts of things.
So let's kick it off. Cyber threat intelligence and you. So I'm going to tell you a bit how we think you should approach threat intelligence. And what I want to ask you, think about what I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes. Think if you can answer these questions. I'm not going to ask them to you in the end, but think about it. Could you answer my questions? If not, that's not a bad place to be at, but we could still help you there answering these questions. If you want to utilize threat intelligence, it's pretty important. I like to keep it simple in the 5WH. It's a reporting mechanism that keeps it simple for you to operationalize threat intelligence, simple questions, and a simple way of utilizing what matters to you. Start with the why. Why could you be a target of threat actors? Why do they want to compromise you? What do you have what they want? So, are you a target of opportunity or a target of choice? It's a big difference. Saying that, who wants to have what you have? What's the intent threat actors have? Could be something you have that they want. Could be for espionage, could be for monetary gain, could be for hacktivism, could be for sabotage. But it all depends on the intent of the who. The who wants a what because he has a certain intent, the why. And this is a distinction if you become a target of opportunity or a target of threat. And then I'm getting more into Saskia's realm, the where, how, and when. Because this is going to be more technical. Know yourself, know your area of operations, for example. The area of operations, when I mention this term, it's all about who you are. It's the area that you control, that you have influence on. You also have the area of interest. That's more the who. Who is coming from the outside in. Yeah, these are all kind of factors and variables that come into account. We don't have time to go into them today. But these are the questions you need to answer. Are you a target of opportunity or a target of choice? Can you tell how your area of operations looks like? Because then we can help you much better. For me as an intelligence guy, for Saskia as an incident responder and forensicator, answering these questions will make cyber defense much easier. And today, when we're getting into the threat brief, I'm going to focus on a bit of structure, nation states, cybercrime, hacktivism. Can we always distinct them quite easily? No. When we look at the global threat landscape at the moment, what we see from our information position, nation state and hacktivism, it's a bit opaque. And we discussed it up front, like, should we go into this beehive? Can we really pull out the so what? What do we want you to remember after this webinar? there's a lot of geopolitical tensions, a lot of geopolitical events. And sometimes we dub it as a nation state, sometimes as hacktivism. So we will skip this one a bit. But one example, maybe you've heard of the Striker attack that happened recently. There are reports there that say it was the Handela group or the Handela team. They are dubbed as an hacktivist, a pro-Palestinian group. On the other hand, I see reports that it's a nation-state actor from Iran. This is what makes it dangerous to only look at names and to put them in certain containers or give them a certain name. It's dangerous. So we'll stay a bit away from that at this point. What's a bit easier to distillate is cybercrime. Cybercrime, what we looked at the global threat landscape in Q1, we saw these 5 actors being the most prolific ones. QLin, we saw like around the 1,000 alleged attacks. We look at the data leakage on the data leak sites or forums. There were around 1,000. QLin was, I think, responsible for 300 of these alleged breaches. Next to that, Akira, Klopp, the Gentleman Group, and Inc. ransomware. It's just names. When we look at them, do they differ a lot? No, they are most RAS, so ransomware as a service groups. They use affiliates, they do extortion. They are part of the same ecosystem, criminal ecosystem. So the names, they are important when we do investigations, but they become less important for you. Who did they attack? When we look at the industries, those 1,000 leaks, 11% we dubbed as focused on the construction industry. Then we see a little drop, and like 9%, so let's say around the 100 attacks were focused on tech and manufacturing. And then we see a larger drop to around 6%, and then we see all the other industries. Basically, every industry gets attacked. Back to the methodology. Are you then a target of opportunity or a target of choice?
Why do you think they're targeting these industries specifically, would you say?
Good question. If you look at construction and manufacturing, Saskia, is it then that they are targeting them out of choice? Or is there an opportunity because there's a certain architecture these industries use?
Yeah, okay.
Could it be manufacturing or OT that you see sometimes? It's harder to protect your environment because it's OT, IT. So is there more opportunity there? That needs a bit more research, but I think it has something to do with your area of operations and how do you look to the outside world. And then if you look at the countries, and here, my fellow countrymen, you are not on here.
Yet.
Around the 1,000 attacks, yet, thank you. It's maybe a good, really good ad. Around these 1,000 alleged attacks, 50% was in the US. Then the next one was Canada. And if we look at the most attacked countries in Europe, UK, France, Germany, and down there, Italy, but we left it with 5. If we look at the Netherlands and Belgium, they are not in the top 10. What does that say? There's no intent to attack Dutch companies? Can they get it easier elsewhere? Are we better protected? Again, back to the methodology. So this is what we saw on a global stage. What we see in behavior of these groups who are attacking these industries in these regions, there's one common denominator here. That's initial access. What we already mentioned in the beginning, they all get into these environments using some sort of social engineering technique. So that happened on a global stage. If you look at the Netherlands, and I really like to mention this one, and it's not often seen, that our intelligence services, the military and the General Intelligence and Security Agency, disseminated a report. And in this case, it was about social engineering attacks using Signal and WhatsApp. And they were not compromising Signal and WhatsApp. They were doing social engineering attacks using one of the most mentioned 2 letters in cybersecurity these days, AI. They were using an AI chatbot, and this has been by the MEVD and the AVD, they said it's a Russian campaign where they are targeting governmental organizations or organizations working with the government, because we know that these organizations use Signal for internal communications. So what here? Do you use Signal or WhatsApp in your internal infrastructure? Or are you confident enough to say that your employees are not using WhatsApp desktop?
Yeah, I must say in the CSERT, this tracks with what we see as well. We had more than several cases in the last, say, year and a half or so, where we see the initial attack vector coming in through WhatsApp. We had a case where it was an employee, a fairly high-ranked employee of a company, and she was approached with a job offer via WhatsApp, say, download this file to look at the offer, and she fell for it. So this is definitely not new, I would say, but clearly the threshold is getting a bit lower with the use of AI and things like that.
And what I find quite interesting, that you see that this Russian campaign is based not with AI, but we expect these days that when somebody asks us a question, it's an AI chatbot. And they adapt to the landscape that we are using these days, that we are involved in. And one big advice here, if these kind of organizations disseminate these kind of reports, I would advise you to read them if you didn't yet, because it's a problem. If these organizations disseminate this in public, yeah, it could be a problem. So again, back to your area of operations, what does this mean to you? Then we look a bit deeper in the Netherlands, what we have seen. Nation-state attacks from Russia, China, Kazakhstan, and others. Because sometimes it's not completely clear, like I explained in the beginning, who is who.
Were you not allowed to put the United States on the slide, or is that what others stands for?
Others could be. Yeah, maybe it's the Dutch ourselves, because we just saw in the former slide that Dutch intelligence services are also busy in this terrain. So, yeah, but let's stick with these. Russia, we just mentioned, where the security services got involved in the dissemination of the cybersecurity advisory. The Dienst Justitiële Inrichtingen, it's Dutch, so I'm skipping easily from Dutch to English today. They had a problem with their landscape. They had a specific software running, endpoint mobile management from Ivanti, that got compromised. I'm not going to in the technical depth here, but we know that China is leveraging this. I've been approached by a partner from APAC who told me, Eric, we see a lot of abuse of this specific vulnerability used by China.
In our private customers as well, I can't say if it was China in those cases, but that particular piece of technology, and it's not only Ivanti, right? It's any Fortinet appliance or perimeter appliances. They're always a very popular attack vector. So this does track with what we see as well.
And an interesting question here is, when you look in the Dienst Justitiële Inrichtingen in the Netherlands, it's a governmental organization. Mm-hmm. So why are they a target of choice or a target of opportunity? Because China, as a threat actor, normally follows a bit of strategy. They are going after a certain goal and they stick with it. Mm. So was the Dienst Justitiële Inrichtingen a target of choice? Were they the real target? Or jumping host towards something else? Yeah. Or just to create persistence to get to their goal. Mm. And this is interesting. This is why we saw China showing interest. The NCSC wrote a report about this, and we saw a lot of, and the NCSC mentioned the words possibly. We saw more attacks because the proof of concept was released by somebody. Maybe the nation states were a bit in front of this, but this is an assumption on my side. I don't know. The last interesting topic was Hydra Saga. It's a threat actor, and they seem to follow the political strategy or the strategy of Kazakhstan. I'm not an expert on Kazakhstan. I don't know exactly what their goals are in the geopolitical arena. Sorry. But what we saw, that they are attacking or compromising targets in Asia. And one country in Europe, the Netherlands. So why? It's interesting. What do you have again that
Kazakhstan wants?
That Kazakhstan wants. What is it you have? What crown jewel do you have? Or what crown jewel they think you have? Why do they have the intent to make you a target of choice? Because it looks like this threat actor from Kazakhstan, allegedly, doesn't go for targets of opportunity, but they go for choice. So interesting. When we go into the cyber criminal part of the Netherlands. We didn't see a lot of leaks. We only saw 5 till today. Maybe we missed one because it's sometimes a bit opaque if it's the Netherlands or Belgium, because not all threat actors know exactly what the Netherlands is. But these were the groups, like AI-Lock, and it's cool because AI-Lock is a ransomware as a service group, extortion group in the criminal ecosystem that uses AI. They even use it in their own name. We saw Anubis, DragonForce, the Gentleman Group that you already saw on the global stage, and Shiny Hunters. Again, these groups are all ransomware as a service groups, or they use affiliate programs. They are part, and this is the takeaway, they are part of one criminal ecosystem. So for you, I would say it doesn't matter if it's Anubis or DragonForce. We're going to get back to the TTPs, to the techniques and behaviors. Those are the ones that are important. But when we look at the victims, AI-Lock was allegedly responsible for the compromise of network NV. Anubis was responsible for AkzoNobel. Yes, and I am aware this was allegedly a US part of AkzoNobel. DragonForce. This is an interesting thing, because DragonForce, and this is where you see why you need intelligence, and I'm biased, sorry for that, but DragonForce also has been attributed to Malaysia as the country of where they are from. Yeah, the rest doesn't really mention an exact point of embarkation, but it's interesting. They ransomwared CPZ, if I pronounce it correctly. Then the Gentleman Group that we already heard on the global stage, Afezo, and then one that has been, I think, and when I look at LinkedIn, I saw a lot of experts in this particular case, Shiny Hunters, who were responsible for the compromise of Odido. I think it's been discussed, so we're not going in there. What I want you to think about and what I want to give you, what's the intent? When we look at it, it seems to be a monetary intent. Yeah, targets of opportunity. What is interesting, that normally these companies, these actors do their leakage on the place called the dark web, right? And the dark web is just a physical part of the internet. What we have seen now, and it seems to exist for quite some years already, it's been dubbed as the COM, the community. It's a new ecosystem for communications. It is where cyber criminals are going, like Shiny Hunters and the Gentleman Group. They communicate. They follow what we are doing in our environment, just as normal human beings. They are using Telegram, Discord, and the COM is also used for grooming little children. It's really an ecosystem full of criminals, where since a year or two now, we also see cyber criminal actors move to. Why? Not sure. Assumption, the threshold is lower. They can influence people there easily. Yeah? And Discord, for example, in the gaming community is well known, being a great place for technical people. Yeah, is where it starts.
At me, although I do
because I'm not Saskia.
I do have a Discord profile. It's true,
a compliment.
but,
It's a compliment.
You know.
It's a compliment. Yeah. So the so what here? When we look at all these groups, cybercrime, nation state, there's one common denominator again. Initial access. How do they get in? They all use one way of social engineering. If it's phishing, quishing, they are using elements of human behavior to compromise you. Then, one little thing that I thought was nice to mention, there was an arrest from a 20-year-old in Dordrecht. I don't know how to pronounce that in English, but in Dutch we say Dordrecht. Joker one-time password. This guy got arrested together with a guy from England, from the UK. They built a tool, or they at least sold a tool. It was a bot. What this bot did, this bot would call you or send you text messages to convince you to give them your one-time password used in your MFA. So your security access. Sorry, I can't get to the word right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. We always warn our clients as well, is you should have MFA, despite this tool existing. But I think a lot of times there's a bit of complacency that you see that's thinking of, okay, if I turn MFA on, I'm golden, I'm bulletproof.
Multi-factor authentication.
That's
Sorry.
the one.
I couldn't get to it.
Yeah,
No.
so, but they have this feeling of, if I turn MFA, that's it, job done, I can go home, I'm protected.
You know how much money they made with this tool?
How much did they make?
7.5 million for a 21-year-old from Dordrecht. It's quite some money, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't do that well when I was 21, so...
No. But again, emphasizing, and of course we are a bit biased, but what we could, social engineering, making use of AI, trying to trick you in doing something for them where they can go past your security tools just by clicking a button or telling a chatbot, yes, it was welcome01, my one-time password. And this is how it works. So, wrapping it up a bit, the threat landscape, the threat brief. What we have seen, what our analysts would say in our teams, it's opaque. You should be prepared. Even if you're targeted choice, targeted opportunity, maybe just collateral damage, you should be prepared. What we see a lot in the threat landscape in Q1 is social engineering. Gaining initial access, cause threat actors, if they are nation state, hacktivists, criminals, script kiddies, I don't really mind how you dub them. If they want to do something in your environment, they need access. They need initial access. So, what I hear a lot, Eric, phishing is changing, right? Social engineering is changing because of, and I'm like, no, not really. When we look at the TTPs again, the techniques, tactics, and procedures, phishing was phishing yesterday, it's phishing today, it will be phishing tomorrow. If you ask me, it's a question of perception. Yeah, the feeling becomes different because a lot of things around us are changing, like with the use of AI, with the change in our environments. With the use of AI, social engineering becomes easier because they can do phishing. Yeah, they can create a note or an email quite easy, and it looks like your company, all with AI. So the threshold of getting involved in social engineering and gaining initial access by phishing, for example, gets lower. It's a feeling, and we should address the feeling, but the real technique didn't really change. But Saskia can tell you a bit more on how it works in an actual war story. So I'll hand it over to Saskia.
Yeah, so no, it is interesting to see the commonalities. And yeah, social engineering remains a very low effort way for threat actors to get into environments. Yes, of course, you see the occasional complicated 0-day, but a lot of the times, like you said, whether it's a nation state or a cyber criminal, they don't need to go that far. And that's a bit what I wanted to showcase today. So we've brought along a CSIRT war story for you. So this is a real world case that we worked on that involved a large distributor. And what I want to showcase here is a form of social engineering that I thought was quite interesting, because I didn't just want to bring another, here's a phishing email, they clicked on a link, Bob's your uncle. But I want to show what I think is not very complex, but quite creative way of gaining initial access to quite a large organization. So in this case, what the client saw just after New Year's, everyone was a bit hungover, they started seeing some activity from a developer that was not meant to be working over Christmas. So already they were like, this doesn't look right. They saw some Microsoft Defender alerts for potential credential access. They saw some malware execution here and there. And all around, it was not a nice way to be welcomed back to work. So when they called us, this is what they knew, basically, is they knew that this developer account was at play. They knew that there had been a few servers that had seen some malware being executed, some alerts going off, and they'd started doing some containment actions as well. So they were resetting passwords and isolating endpoints. But they called us because they weren't quite sure how did the threat actor come in, what had happened. And then when the CSIRT investigated a bit more, this is eventually the picture we arrived at. And I think the thing that probably upset the client for the most part, was that it wasn't only until the 23rd of December that the attacker had been in. They'd been in much earlier, already since the end of November. So I think what is interesting about this case and what I want to focus on is how they got in, the initial access method used here and this form of social engineering. So that's what I'm going to focus on for the most part. So what we see, or what we saw, is this was a brand new employee for this company. They just started, a developer with an administrator account, had access to all sorts of important servers, resources within the IT environment. And as any security conscious technical person does when they start, is they want to set up their PC, they want to get all their software running so they're ready to work, and this guy goes and searches for a password manager, as we should all do, but perhaps maybe not the way this happened. So he Googles for a password manager, and he Googles for the term KeePass, which is a well-known password manager and used by many organizations. And he looks at his results, and then he clicks on the top one. Unfortunately for this user, and he perhaps didn't realize it when he clicked on it, it was an SEO poisoned link. So what that means is it was a link or a website URL that had been promoted to the top of the search results that wasn't actually legitimate. It was a fake URL, so KeeBass instead of KeePass. And there are various ways that threat actors can perform SEO poisoning, so by promoting their results to the top. Sometimes they pay the sponsored fee, so it says sponsored next to the result. Sometimes they use some other like keyword manipulations and SEO manipulation and things like that. But
I think they even use legit companies, because if you are a freelancer in this area, you are not a cybersecurity expert. So maybe you could be promoting SEO poisoning for
a legitimate website. We've seen that happen as well, where a legitimate website would get compromised, usually not a very high security website, and then get promoted. And that's definitely a technique that people use as well. In this case, though, it was definitely a fake website, but you can't really blame the poor guy for getting confused, because this is the fake website, and this is the legitimate website. So just to go back a slide, you can see that there is, it's easy to step into this trap, I think. So he has this website in front of him, the illegitimate one. He clicks on the big green button that you see there, and he downloads something. So what does he download? He downloads, I'm going to skip past this because we already went over it. He downloads what is essentially a file called KeePass blah 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 setup.exe. So it looks legitimate, great. He installs it. The application, dumps its modules, and yes, KeePass does get installed. It looks legitimate. It does what it's meant to do. So you can save your passwords and then everything. But what's also happening in the background is that there's 3 essentially bad files or components of malware being dropped on his system at the same time.
But like you already said, right, it's like this was just a change. They basically changed the P in a B. It's not even a very sophisticated way of impersonation.
No, I don't think so, no.
It's interesting when you go back to the fundamentals of human brain and psychology. You are being tricked. Because you see something, your brain tells you like, hey, this is legit, I know this. And your brain skips over, because you saw KeePass so many times. Your brain has it incorporated. I can lecture about this for hours. I will not, no worries. But it's interesting. But what say if they would have KeePass and only the A was in Cyrillic? Then you will definitely not see it. So it's an interesting way of how social engineering also evolves, or there are multiple ways maybe.
We see it a lot in phishing as well, like straight up phishing, where instead of Microsoft.com where you log in, it's Microsoft and then the I has been changed to a lowercase I or something. It's very common, and it's the sort of thing that you don't notice unless you had some sort of awareness training that tells you need to look out for this. So people fall victim to it quite often, unfortunately. So again, it's this case is from early 2025, but we still see it happening today.
But you still, what recommendation for a password manager you would give, Nasa?
you should still use a password manager like KeePass, definitely. Just maybe double check where you download it from.
Fair enough.
I would say. But yes, so back to the 3, let's say, bad components that was actually installed when this user executed what he thought was the legitimate file. So the first file that got dropped on disk is what you see in front of you. So this is a file called conf.bin. It had the file header for a JPEG photo. And when you open it up using a normal photo viewer, this is actually what you saw. You saw half a picture of Saturn. But only the first half of the file was essentially image data. The second half of the file was where some really bad stuff was lurking. So that's where they essentially implanted an obfuscated version of a Cobalt Strike beacon. So Cobalt Strike, for those who don't know, is a fairly, let's say, prolific and infamous tool. It started out as a legitimate pen testing tool, but threat actors use it to perform basically whatever they want in your environment if they manage to implant it. So they can do lateral movement with it. They can steal your credentials with it. They can exfiltrate data to the outside with it. It is a very dangerous and very effective tool if left unchecked to run in your environment. So, but this isn't Cobalt Strike executing yet. This is a dormant file. And the reason threat actors do this is to essentially evade detection. Because your antivirus is scanning files being dropped, so is your EDR. In this case, unfortunately, the developer's laptop didn't have an EDR agent on it, but the standard AV did not pick this up. So it was effective as a form of defense evasion. So this file is lying there in wait. It's lurking. And now we move on to the second component that was introduced. So KeePass.exe. So again, this is the normal KeePass binary that if you download from the normal website, you would get this. But the threat actor had attached or backdoored another piece of code into it to do some extra not so nice things. And it was our brilliant reverse engineering team that extracted this code for us and then analyzed what it was doing. And what they found was that as you enter passwords into this password manager and use it as it's intended to be used, it waits until you've hit at least 7 entries in that password manager. So while this is happening, it's building a file in memory, basically monitoring that. And once you reach 7 entries, a few things happen. So the first thing that happens is that this code gets executed. So that CSV that was being built in memory, when it's 8 rows, so a header file and then the 7 entries, it takes all the credentials that you've put in your password manager and dumps it into a .kp file, which is a KeePass database file. It also launches a new executable, which I'll tell you what it does in a moment, that essentially loads the Cobalt Strike beacon. So that gray half of the Saturn picture that you see, it takes that and makes it executable and makes it persistent, which basically means they now have a foothold on your system. Every time your system starts up and you launch KeePass, Cobalt Strike is also launched in the background. So that's a bit what we suspected happened, because we weren't able to completely determine all of this, because a lot of it happened in memory, which is difficult to analyze. But this module gets called, this executable. It takes an argument and as part of the query parameter. Then it essentially executes this load underscore conf function, which takes conf.bin, so that Saturn picture, decrypts or deobfuscates the Cobalt Strike beacon, and then now it is made into something that executes. It's made into something that's persistent. The threat actor essentially has access now. And we think that they then use Cobalt Strike to exfiltrate that KeePass database file that basically had all the developers' passwords in it. And this is the Cobalt Strike configuration, just as a point of interest for those who care about things like that. So it was a HTTPS beacon talking out over 443. Difficult to detect because it blends in with a lot of other traffic. We have some C2 domains there. I would be surprised if they still function, but that's a bit what the client detected later on in their MDE alerts as well, beaconing going out to these C2 addresses. So that's a bit where we're at. What I find unfortunate in this particular case is if you look at the timestamps here, it took 3 minutes from the developer downloading this software and installing it to Cobalt Strike being made persistent and all their credentials being stolen. Because what we saw when we analyzed the KeyPass file that was dumped, it had 67 entries in it, 67 passwords. So we think the developer probably imported a bunch of his old passwords and then kicked off the
Was it target
malware.
bad luck a bit, or
I think it was bad luck, honestly. When we looked at the KeyBass domain, we saw it was actually only registered an hour before the developer performed the Google search. So I don't think there was any way for the threat actor to know this guy was going to go and look for a password manager.
or
So,
target of choice?
nah, I think
No?
that's okay, no, I'm no CTI expert, but for me, I think this was bad luck. This was an opportunistic attack. But the consequence is the threat actor is in, right? They now have a foothold in your environment. They have a bunch of passwords to probably sensitive sources, and they have your data now. What follows then, essentially, so the second half of the attack, I don't want to focus on this too long because this sort of highlight was about initial access. But it's fairly standard what we see happening afterwards. So we see once the threat actor had established his foothold, you see them performing discovery activities to get to know what else is in your environment, what other servers are there. They're looking at what other credentials they can gather. So we actually saw the threat actor dumping like SAM and system registry hives, things like that, exfiltrating it to get more local credentials to compromise local administrators. We actually also see them contact a backup server, a Veeam backup server at some point, to extract credentials from those backups as well. And then we later see them come back to interrogate and tamper with those backups, so to maybe take them offline or corrupt them, because this is activity that you see fairly often right before a threat actor deploys ransomware. I think the client was quite lucky in this case that they did notice it, although perhaps it could have been noticed earlier, but they did notice it before the ransomware was deployed. So in that regard, yeah, luck, bad luck and luck, I guess you could say, was on their side for this one. So essentially the root cause here, in a very unfortunate turn of events, was this unmanaged device given to this developer who had no access to a approved or whitelisted software repository, no gold build that already had KeyPass, for example, installed, things like that. No security tooling on it, so no Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Agent or anything like that, doing what he thinks is best, not noticing, because all that stuff with Cobalt Strike was happening in the background. The user sees none of those. He goes on Christmas, and meanwhile the threat actor is carefully mapping out and owning your environment, essentially. But in the end, the business, they did stay in business. They were able to recover from this. It took a lot of days of password resetting. They had to do Kerberos ticket resets, which is very disruptive to your operations, or can be.
Not destructive or disruptive as ransomware.
That's a good point. Yes. At least it wasn't as disruptive as that. But these exercises can be fairly expensive, I think, if you don't, or if you're not properly prepared for them. And yeah, I guess the lessons learned in this case would be, look at your Defender alerts and just make it easy for your users to not fall prone for this. A bit of user awareness training as well to spot the differences if you are being targeted in this way, or,
Yeah, it's a bit of a, how do you say it, incorrect English. We say it a lot, like the weakest link is the human being. Is it? Yeah, because you only need one. So it's not an easy advice, right? It's not really a good advice, but to not look at it, it's not an excuse. But to get back to what we did, because this was quite cool. And when you subscribed for this webinar, you saw the title, Good Siblings or Bad Stepsisters. Yeah, Incident Response and Threat Intelligence. What we believe in, and what we are showing here, we see a lot like intelligent feed incident response, or does incident response feeds threat intelligence. In this case, it was Saskia feeding our intelligence teams, because we could write a report based as you can see, what Saskia discovered in this investigation. And our teams went deeper. And you can see Akira in this report. Akira was mentioned already in the threat brief, so they are still active. You see SEO poisoning in there, social engineering technique. You see some other things in there. So by following the data from one case, we can build a new piece of intelligence that we could use again to feed, to protect our clients' environments, but also that feeds back to a team like Saskia's, or our SOCs, our NOCs, our pen testers, whatsoever. And this is where the answer is, of course, we are really good siblings, especially the two of us. So this is what we did. And this is why we believe, strongly believe, that this is how you should operate. It's not intelligence as a point solution or instant response or this. Bring it all together, because this is where the real power lies of these kind of things. So, we're almost at the end, so bear with us for a bit. What do we want you to remember? The key takeaways. Understand yourself. I'm repeating myself a bit, but I can't emphasize it enough. Your area of operations. How do you look? The part of the threat landscape that you could control is your area of operations. That's you. How does your network look like? What software do you use? What third parties do you have? Understand that, but also what's the awareness level to not click on key bears or not fall for this voice phishing or phishing kind of thing. That's hard. This is not an easy task, but it's still a good advice because there's no excuse not doing it. And there are people who could help you. But most important, this is what you control yourself. You could start with this after I stop talking. And this is, I think, the most important thing that you should remember here. And in the end, when we look at the threat landscape, understand your place in the threat landscape. So what? Why could you become a victim of the 5 WHs? Who, what, where, when, why, and how? How? What's your place in there? Are you vulnerable to social engineering or to phishing or whatever thing that could compromise you because somebody has the intent to take it from you? And to get back... sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just to link to what you're saying. We so often in our incidents see clients who can't tell us what they have in their network, or who don't know what they're protecting, who don't know what technologies they have, that threat actors are actively targeting, like we've mentioned Ivanti and Fortinet. It's not only these vendors, and I don't want to single out a vendor, but you have to start somewhere to understand what you have, and then understanding your place in the threat landscape. And for when people ask the CISO, okay, so what can we actually do to prevent this from happening to us? How do you stop this, or how do you stop it from getting this far? We believe in keeping it very basic.
Because it's quite interesting what you're just saying.
Yeah.
Like those threat actors or those actors, because it could be an insider, right? It's not always a threat. It's maybe a risk, but maybe for another webinar. Because they map your area of operations.
Yeah, of course.
Because they want to know how you look like, because they can become more efficient and effective in reaching their goal. So we could be more efficient if we know your area of operations as well. And to get back a bit in how we started, aka nothing really changed. In the threat landscape, initial access is still there. The kill chain didn't change. So yes, our environments are changing, the feeling is changing. Of course there are things changing. This is not without nuance. But in the end, there are possibilities for you. Because having a gap in your security doesn't mean you can't do anything about it. You're not without choice.
Yeah, and first you have to understand those gaps. And again, what you say is very similar to the advice we give in the CSIRT as well, is you need to focus on having your basics in place, which is not the sexy answer, and you can't just buy a tool that does this for you, but it is important that you cover the low-hanging fruit, because with the social engineering stuff or you know, however the threat actor chooses to attack you, it's always going to be the path of least resistance. And we keep seeing it in the CSIRT as well. So this is what we say is be brilliant at the basics, the 4 Ps. I believe the NCSC in the UK came up with like the catchy headline of this, but it's good advice. So the first thing that we advise you to look at, we call it phishing, but it is understanding, okay, what are your users susceptible to, which you've made the point already, Eric. I think what's interesting to highlight here, and we did touch on it as well, is MFA isn't enough. You also need to pair access controls with this. So in the form of conditional access policies, passkeys, which is a new thing, phishing resistant MFA, they call it. We'll see if that holds. I'm a bit skeptical, but you never know. So yeah, understand what is happening here and understand how your users can be targeted and give them some training and awareness. Like, try and warn them. Even if you only reach 10 out of 20 of your users, that's 10 options less for the threat actor to get at you. We also recommend look at your patching, and this ties a bit into your network visibility, the know thyself thing. What do you have? The amount of times clients tell us, I don't know, or, oh, I didn't know this was on the network. You don't want to be in that position. So how do you create visibility in your network? Are you doing that? Could you do it better? Do you know where you don't have visibility? Because that's where the threat actor is going to strike, in our experience. And there's all sorts of ways you can figure this out. Pen tests, vulnerability management programs, whatever you want to use. Just start somewhere. We also recommend, it's a bit of a simplistic one, but this concept of ports, okay? Also in the technical sense, don't leave open RDP on your internet-facing servers, but also what is directly exposed to the internet, okay? We had a case once, where it was a company and one of their suppliers had a VPN gateway into the supplier, but the CISO of that company had no clue it was there. So it was this unmonitored, unmanaged VPN point where the threat actor waltzed straight in. And they had no idea until they got ransomware. So understand, what does your connection to the outside world look like, not only for threat actors, but your suppliers, your vendors, your own people who are working remotely.
And the cool thing is behavior, of course, doesn't change, because we could do a scan of the perimeter of everybody. And we are legit.
Threat actors do that.
We have a good heart. But there are others who can do it. So you're not powerless here.
That's exactly what threat actors do. They continuously scan whatever you have left open.
Yeah. And they don't have business hours.
No, not in the usual sense, no. I don't think they have HR, or maybe they do.
Some have, yeah.
But the last P in the 4 Ps is passwords. So, as my boss in the CSIRT always likes to say, is audit your company's passwords before the attackers do it for you. So understand, okay, what is, for example, the oldest password on your domain. Understand how people are storing passwords. Again, password manager, it's a great idea, but then you need to control how that's rolled out and how that's managed. I quite like this point of thinking about passwords as a part of your identity. You need to treat it as the keys to your house or the keys to your car. You're not just going to let it lie there and sort of trust that no one's going to take it. You need to implement controls and think about things like, okay, are you reusing passwords? All these sorts of inane things, just like we saw with the password manager. So it's such a simple attack vector that we see getting used so often. There are ways to make it harder. So that would be my takeaways for this, right? Is just be brilliant at the basics and start with this, despite your capabilities, and figure out a way to make it harder for people to attack you. Just so you don't have to call us and we go, yeah, we've seen this one before.
So that means we are at the end. Thank you very much for listening to us. Hopefully you found it informative and even nice to listen to as well. So thank you, dankjewel in proper Dutch. Hopefully till next time. And be safe out there. Thank you.
Dankjewel.